So today we are going to dive deep into the devaluation phase when dating a narcissist. And if you have been following along the videos in this channel, you know that we have been exploring the complex stages of narcissistic relationships for a while now. In this video, I'm going to unpack some personal experiences with the devaluation phase using research-based evidence from our podcast episodes to shed light on this dark and painful experience. But before we dive in, let me introduce myself. I'm Jen Hachia, and on this channel, we dive into the complexities of psychology and manipulation in relationships and professional settings, breaking it all down to make it easier for you to navigate. So if that sounds interesting to you, don't forget to subscribe. And if you are already a regular watcher, hello there. Now let's dive in. So usually narcissistic relationships are made up of 5 main stages. These stages include courtship, persuasion, devaluation, control, and discard. During the courtship phase, you are idealized and seen as perfect in the eyes of the narcissist. Your every attribute is exaggerated and praised because to them, you are not a real person but a canvas onto which they project their idealized fantasies. However, as the relationship progresses, the narcissist begins to see your flaws. As they become more familiar to you, they start detecting imperfections and inconsistencies with their idealized image of you. And this shift marks the beginning of the devaluation phase. Initially, the narcissist believes that these flaws can be fixed through advice or very subtle manipulations. The aim is to mold you into their perfect partner, not really appreciate who you are. My journey in an abusive relationship through the devaluation phase was marked by constant criticism. From comments about my past smoking habits to judgments about my social life and personal interests, every part of who I was became a point of contention. The narcissist's critical eye turned every aspect of my life into something to be either corrected or hidden. The first significant research insights comes from Campbell and Foster, who explained that narcissists initially view their partners through a lens of idealization. This is why, in the beginning, everything about you seems perfect to them. However, once their idealized image is threatened, they start the devaluation process, highlighting the perceived flaws that they see in you, which are really what make you human. The thing is, when we are in relationships like this and we are unaware that this is a devaluation phase and not a real healthy course of a relationship, we start believing that there are parts of ourselves that we have to erase from our identity in order to gain acceptance and ultimately love from that person. This devaluation phase is not just emotionally draining, but it's also deeply transformative. Over time, it can make us begin to internalize the narcissist's criticism, which of course leads to a severe loss of self-esteem. You might pressure yourself to try to meet these unrealistic standards and begin increasingly obsessed with perfection. When I went through this phase in a past relationship, I did not have a very high self-esteem at all. So I tried to adjust myself to that person, and I restricted my behaviors, avoided discussing my past so I wouldn't trigger him, and sacrificed personal joys to conform to his expectations. This huge shift happens because narcissists tend to impose their own ideals onto their partners, leading to self-scrutiny and self-doubt. And remember that before this devaluation phase, there was a grooming phase with love bombing and all these things that first got you hooked and in a place where you were more susceptible to be receptive to the destruction of identity that comes with the devaluation phase. And once your self-esteem becomes slowly destroyed by the narcissist through the devaluation phase, you start feeling this constant need for validation and approval from this person. And as expected, this can escalate to very severe psychological effects, such as increased anxiety, depression, and even obsessive compulsive behaviors. When we are living in this situation, we often don't realize the severity of the constant degradation and manipulation that we are enduring, because the narcissist behaviors are so unexpected and they range from insulting and belittling you to exploiting your talents and making you question your own sanity, while sometimes breadcrumbing you a little bit of the love bombing that used to exist in the grooming phase. And narcissistic abuse, of course, often leads to gaslighting, where basically the abuser makes the victim doubt their perceptions or memories of a specific event or something that happened. This was a huge part of my experience. I began to question my reality and felt immense shame for not living up to their impossible standards. And this aligns with research by Pincus and Lukowiski, who describe how narcissists use tactics like gaslighting to maintain control and ensure that their partners remain dependent on their approval. The devaluation phase is profoundly confusing and painful, and is ultimately marked by a discrepancy between how the narcissist initially treated you and how they begin to treat you as their idealization wanes. And we should never underestimate the power of love bombing, because then when we reach this devaluation phase, what happens besides seeking this approval, having no self-esteem, is that we start to do anything in our power to get that person that we initially met, that person that was loving and seemingly accepting. And it's chasing that sort of high that we felt in the beginning of the relationship that leads us deeper and deeper into the depression that is attached to being devalued and to being undermined by someone that is supposed to love us. The narcissist's rage and dismissiveness in this phase becomes a stark contrast to the initial admiration, leaving you disoriented and, of course, emotionally devastated. And while it's happening, it's often very difficult to recognize the warning signs and the gradual erosion of self-worth that happens in these relationships. This phase is also characterized by the narcissist's decrease in empathy and increase in their critical behavior. They make you feel increasingly invisible and undervalued despite your efforts to meet their expectations. So if you are in a relationship like this right now and you are trying to meet their expectations and you realize that it's never enough and wonder if it's because you are not doing enough, no, you are. It's just that for them, it's never going to be enough because they expect a perfection that is just not human. So ultimately, the devaluation phase in a narcissistic relationship is a time of intense psychological struggle. It involves a shift from love bombing to very harsh criticism, where the narcissist's unrealistic expectations force you to continually seek their approval while slowly losing touch with your own identity. Realizing the damaging effects of the devaluation phase and how no matter how much you try, you are never going to reach their standards. Perhaps it's time to realize that it's not going to happen and that you need to prioritize your well-being, because their standards are impossible to meet, not because you are not a good person or you're not doing enough, but simply because as you try to do what they expect of you, they are going to keep raising the stakes until they completely depersonalize you and turn you into a shell of who you used to be. So I hope that this video has given you a little bit of hope and realization that you are not the problem and you just need to find shelter and safety within yourself and surround yourself with a strong support system that is going to see you as a human, not a doll that needs to reach a certain level of perfection in order to be loved. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe for more, and I will see you on the next one. Bye!